Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new edition of KerVAM, a Doctor Who podcast, where we are, of course, talking about the new season of Doctor Who. We've had the first part of the finale, Wish World, which is weird and crazy and brings back Omega and the Rani and all this crazy stuff. So I feel like there's a whole lot to talk about, and we're going to delve very deep into all of that, just as we've done for the series so far. So I'm, of course, joined by Ryan, Charlie, and Bill. The whole crew are back to discuss episode 7 of the series. We've got just a couple of days, really, when you listen to this, left until the finale of season 2 of Doctor Who, and potentially Doctor Who for a very, very long time. So it feels like this is a pretty significant couple of episodes to be talking about. So Charlie, I'll come to you first. Wish World, we've spent all series talking about how this has been a good series, but the finale will define it. And I know we've only had the part 1, so it's a bit hard to fully judge. But what was your perspective on part 1 and where we're at so far?
I mean, pretty much, like the short answer is I really liked this episode, right? But it's very strange talking about a part 1 when, like, talking about this episode just on its own will be relevant for all of exactly 1 week.
Yeah.
And then from Saturday, it's just going to be talked about as the two-parter. And regardless of whether part 1 was good or not, it's going to be the story as a whole being good that actually matters. You know, it feels very Legend of Ruby Sunday, which we all kind of agreed was pretty good about, it was a bit under a year ago, 11 months ago.
Yeah.
And then Empire of Death happened, and we don't really like the story anymore. So it's just a case of, can the actual finale be pulled off? But I mean, yeah, this episode in isolation, because we don't have the reality war yet, I think it was great. I mean, the actual plot, not talking about the ending or anything, I just think it was loads of fun. We've got like this sort of weird, almost like a Truman Show kind of WandaVision-esque kind of, you've just got the Doctor and Belinda being this married couple with a child.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you obviously pretty much 5 minutes in, you get Ruby showing up and being like, it's obvious that she's not in on this whole thing and she knows who the Doctor is and everything.
Yeah.
They get all freaked out and, she gets taken away and it's, Mel's there and she's just Mel, You've got Conrad. I mean, the cold open, obviously, you've got, the start with the Rani stealing this baby that's also a member of the Pantheon, which I'm sure we'll get to. But I mean, after that, then you've got the scene of the Doctor and Belinda waking up in the morning, seeing Conrad on the TV, and it's like, "Good morning, Conrad," and then it's the title sequence. I thought that was brilliant, and it's just so hilarious how you just have Conrad, this mid-season villain, being the sort of news broadcaster for this world and talking about like reading this book called Doctor Who. I just think it's loads of fun. You've obviously got all the weird, mugs falling through tables and, that doesn't look right. And you just get a really nice build up to obviously the end of the episode where the Doctor's in this bone palace. And obviously, the Doctor starts doubting so hard and, because he's such a powerful being, the cracks of like reality start to appear.
Yeah.
And Omega can rise from the underverse for some reason. That we don't really know. It's all very just kind of, we've had 45 minutes of setup and it was very good setup, but like, what now? Let's find out why Omega's back and why the hell is Conrad even here? Like, I feel like we still don't really know why Conrad's actually here and why he's reading this book called Doctor Who on TV. It's very meta and kind of, what's he doing? It's still very out of place when you actually watch the season through and watch Lucky Day, and it's like, what's Conrad doing here?
Yeah,
it's very weird in the grand scheme of things. It's kind of, but I mean, this 45 minutes of setup, I think it was pretty great. It was just very enjoyable. You've got, like I said, it feels a lot like the sort of the Truman Show or WandaVision, where everyone's playing along in this TV show type world. But then you get some things which start to look off, and that obviously builds up, and eventually the whole thing falls through. I thought that was great, but bottom line is we'll have to wait a few days to see how it's all going to resolve. Which I don't know about you guys, but I have absolutely no idea how this is going to all end. It's
No.
very weird. It might be Shooty's last ever story.
Yeah.
We really don't know. And I think it's worth mentioning, if it is Shooty's last ever story, it's very, regardless of whether the episodes are good or not, it's a very good round off of his era, I would say.
Yeah.
We have a member of the Pantheon, we have two big classic returning villains. There's Rogue, um, which is worth mentioning. He appeared a little bit on the TV,
Mhm.
didn't he? There's Susan, there's
Yeah.
all of that. It's obviously we've got the space babies, Poppy. It's all kind of there, but it's more just kind of question, question, question. It seems like there's about 30 minutes of exposition, yet we still know nothing, I
Mm.
think is a way to put it. But I mean, yeah, episode in pure isolation, I think is a solid 8, 9 out of 10.
Mhm.
But we'll have to wait.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I tend to agree with you. I think this episode probably stands up a little bit more on its own than the Legend of Ruby Sunday did last series. Because although I agree it is a whole load of setup, there's at least the kind of interesting concept of this wished world and the Doctor and Belinda being married and having a kid, and that whole kind of changed world concept. Of course, that is all, in a way, it is all set up for the Rani's plan and all this kind of thing. But I feel like it can stand up on its own a little bit more than like the Doctor and Ruby being in a video and a flashback of the night of Ruby's being found and all of that. That is pure setup and nothing else. Like, it really is just teasing you what's going to happen and what's going to be revealed. Whereas, yeah, I feel like there's a bit more standing up on its own. I do kind of agree that the Conrad thing is a little bit weird. I get why the Rani is doing it in terms of creating a world that's going to get the Doctor trapped into this world to then get him to doubt it, because he's got ultimately the biggest doubt because he's a Time Lord and it'll tear reality apart. Sure, that's just a whole load of RTD nonsense, but in the context of the story, fine, I'm going with it. But I don't really see why we needed it to be Conrad's idealistic world as opposed to anybody else's. It kind of felt like Russell wanted to do some kind of 1984 style story, and he had this character of Conrad who kind of had those sort of views of what the world should be like, shall we say, and he sort of saw the opportunity to put those two together. At the moment, I don't really see anything deeper than that. It doesn't. I don't really feel like he's going to be revealed to be some mysterious being or have any more significance than that. But I could be proved completely wrong. But I feel like that whole aspect of this story, I think, is definitely a really strong part, something I really enjoyed, and I think does make this episode stand alone a little bit more than what we saw in the beginning of the last season. So Bill, coming to you next, what did all of that and the kind of Rani's plan and just that whole aspect of the story, how did that play for you?
Um, well, I think it is just as Charlie was saying, it's very difficult, isn't it, really, to judge this one because again, it's part one of two. So it does again feel very much like set up essentially as an episode. But within that, like, you are right in terms of like how last year felt even more like setup, whereas this time it does still feel like a setup episode, but there's also like this whole kind of alternate reality going on, and there's kind of stuff that Russell has done just to try and make it different, I suppose. In terms of the Rani's plan, I really don't know like what she exactly is trying to do. I know, uh, are we allowed to mention the next time trailer?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, Apparently she wants to use Omega to resurrect Gallifrey somehow,
Yes,
which
something like
will
that.
be very interesting to see how that
Yeah,
works out.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's just like again, it's just trying to think like what on earth has this baby that's supposedly a god got to do with what the Rani is wanting to do? It's like I mean, I am kind of completely here for it because I think Archie does a really good job with the Rani,
mm,
and she's kind of like harkening back, I think, to a bit of like Kato Mara, but also kind of very much making it her own. And so I'm intrigued to see what she does, but again, there's just so many questions like going into the reality war now, and it's kind of the biggest question I suppose we have to ask ourselves is like, is it gonna pay off, or is it gonna be at least sort of an Empire of Death situation where not
Mm,
all of it is properly paid off in the right way, in a satisfactory way?
Yeah.
Um, I'd like to imagine that Conrad has got more to do than just reading Doctor Who bedtime stories, as it seems to be.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it's so difficult to tell at the minute, I think.
Mm.
It's one of those like I think with some first parts to a series finale, you could probably tell at least some where some bits of it are going to go in the second half. With this one, I don't think you can really kind of tell
Yeah,
because
true.
it's just there's so much stuff that could happen. Like this could be Shooty's last episode, it might not be. It could be that Conrad is there to become like a physical form for Omega or something. I don't know. Or is literally just there to read the stories and create this world.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, how does that baby god tie into it all? It's just really weird stuff going on at the minute, and it's so tricky to try and like think how is this all going to tie up? Like it will probably obviously it will get all tied up in the next episode. It's just a question of like will it be tied up well and will it
mm.
feel kind of like earned, I suppose, and right?
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. There is a whole lot in this episode, and it almost feels like we're not that far into the story in a sense. Like we've only really got, in terms of like the Rani's master plan and all of that. Really, all we've done is open up the realities of the underverse so that Omega can rise, and then she can start to put a plan into place of creating new time lords or whatever she's going to do. So it sort of feels like, as you say, there's not any clear idea or really way you can predict where the story is going to go next, apart from we are surely going to see Omega in whatever form he is in now in the next episode, and there's going to be some stuff going on there. Like, I don't feel like we know very much else. So, Ryan, I feel like we've kind of covered that there's a lot in this story. I think this episode probably has really every significant character from the Ncuti Gatwa era. It's shown in this episode in some shape or form. Do you think that it does a good job of handling so many different characters within 45 minutes?
Well, here's the thing with Wish World, and I wish, no pun intended, I wish I loved this. I really did. I really wish I could get on board, but I'm not gonna lie, after I finished it, it left me a bit nervous and concerned. I'm not
Okay.
gonna lie. I mean, way more so than Legend of Ruby Sunday, way more because of the fact that
Mm.
there's just so much going on. As I said, there's just way too much. I mean, if you look back at Legend of Ruby Sunday, there was really only two things really that's been going on. The Again, the mystery of Ruby Sunday, and of course the whole mystery of Susan Triad that's building into the return of Sutek. It was just only really two things,
Mm.
really. This is like a bajillion other so many things going on. You know, we have the two Ranis, we have Conrad, Omega, this Wish World, and this magic MacGuffin baby that's in there that's can create this whole thing. And let's be honest, that baby is a MacGuffin. Let's be honest, it's a glorified MacGuffin and nothing else.
Yeah, I feel like that baby's not really going to have any purpose in the second episode. I feel like it was just there to make the wish world happen, and then, cool, that explains how the world appeared, move on.
Yeah, and also the appearance of Poppy the space baby now has become the Doctor's daughter for some reason, and then Ruby
Yeah.
coming into it and somehow remembering all this, and Roe coming back, and Susan back, and maybe there's going to be all this law stuff. I'm not going to lie, it's left me extremely nervous
Yeah.
because of the fact that there's so much going on, and I'm not entirely sure all the characters are served properly. I mean, as well as you mentioned before, I do like the idea. The one thing I did love was the idea of Conrad creating this world, because as I said, it is very Truman Show-esque, and it also kind of reminded me a little bit of the film Don't Worry, Darling, which kind of did something very similar, even though it didn't really succeed fully. But it does that idea of this almost incel-like men wanting to create this kind of matrix or sort of like this perfect utopian world that they think is the best, and having, um men going to work, wives stay at home and do the chores, all that kind of 50s, 40s-esque kind of world. I mean, yes, it didn't come together at the end. I mean, it was basically at the end it turned into the Matrix, kind of, but it is sort of that similar sort of vibe as what this story is. And I do really like that. And I like how Conrad, and how he is kind of built up as a little bit more of a threat in this story. But again, I'm not entirely sure how he's going to really factor into part two, really, and what his function is going to be. And again, and I feel like Belinda also kind of gets a bit shortchanged. And it's weird with Belinda. It's very weird because when she started off, she had, as we said, she had a lot of potential. She's doesn't want to be like the companion. She wants to be taken home, and you think, oh, this is going to be interesting. But as the season has progressed, that kind of potential has mattered less and less as it's gone on, to the point where is she? I mean, if she does leave at the end of this season, what was even the kind of the point of all that stuff in the beginning, if this is what it's going to end up being? So I feel like Belinda kind of got a little bit shortchanged, and Ruby. I mean, I did like how Ruby was factored in. She's the only one who can see through this world because she's kind of lived through a sort of alternate world with 73 yards, and how that ties in. I did like that. But against that, juggling that, how are you going to manage the Doctor? How are you going to manage Belinda, Ruby, the unit team, Mel, Susan, Rogue, and Poppy, and all these other characters? It does feel a bit too much, I'm not going to lie. And also the Rani wanting to create a world to trap the Doctor, to create this convoluted scheme. It's basically Castrovalva, kind of, because the Master creates this world, this convoluted scheme just to trap the Doctor. Like, surely there's less extravagant ways of doing this. Surely it does. When you think about it, and I'm not gonna lie, how it's juggling characters, it was a bit all over the place. And I will say, it hasn't changed my views on the Rani.
Okay.
So it's kind of the same as it was before, really, where it's like great performances, but the character's just not that interesting. It's still kind of a female master.
Yeah, well, I was going to say this because I feel like I've seen a lot of people going, "Whoa, the Rani, isn't she great?" I'm like, it was a great performance, but it felt like she was playing a female master, not playing the Rani, based on what I've watched of Mark of the Rani, Time and the Rani. Like, she's just a pretty chill scientist who just wants to like experiment and, rule a world, experiment, kill some people, doesn't really care, not really very fussed about the Doctor, except for in Time and the Rani, where she has a purpose for the Doctor of, capturing him and then using him for this massive brain thing. Like, so why is she suddenly, planning a whole scheme around him, dancing with him, telling him how they used to love each other and all this nonsense? It just, I like, the performance is great, absolutely, she's brilliant, but it just doesn't feel like what Classic Who shows the Rani to be. And sure, regeneration changes it, I get it, but surely you might as well have just done a female master. Like, it doesn't feel like it's different enough to justify being the Rani.
Exactly, and it just leaves me wondering, like, surely there could have been another villain to substitute this. And also, for all the amount of time you had with the Rani, surely you could have had more time with Omega instead, because I feel like Omega is a much more interesting character. As I said many times before, I think Omega is such a fantastic character, great villain, great backstory, and I feel like he's a character that has a lot more potential than the Rani. I mean, looking back, I think he should have been the main villain of Flux, really, because if you think about it, if the Flux was created out of this antimatter energy, and Omega's whole deal is antimatter, surely he could have been the villain of Flux instead, really. And it's so weird. And when we get to part two, how are you going to have enough time with Omega, really, to establish him as a threat? It's like, you introduce a more interesting villain, in the back half of this. Surely you would rather have him a bit earlier beforehand. It feels a bit weirdly structured. Are you even going to have enough time with Omega? Is he going to be that much of a threat? And also, for people, casual viewers not watching, surely you're going to have to explain who he is because he's a magician.
Well, there'll be a flashback, won't there? Everything. I mean, the amount of flashbacks in this episode to different parts of the episode and other episodes are slightly ridiculous. So I'm sure it'll just be a shot of the three doctors of Omega. But then I felt like in this episode, I don't know what you think, Charlie and Bill. I don't feel like it made much sense to describe Omega as creator of the Time Lords, because as far as I understand it, he's not really created the Time Lords. He was one of the founding fathers of the Time Lords. He created time travel, but I don't really think he's the creator of the Time Lords.
It's because I feel like it's just kind of Russell is just kind of writing fan fiction, and creator of the Time Lords just sounds cooler than creator of time travel. That's just I feel like that's just the simplest answer, really.
Yeah.
But I mean, I might as well just segue this into the fact I completely agree with I mean, she's just Missy, but I mean less good because she's not Michelle Gomez. As much as an amazing performance as she pulled off, it's just kind of another incarnation of the Master. And I think she was great if that's what it was. But it's just kind of, she's not the Rani. It's like, we've brought this up a few times this season. It's Russell writing for social media.
Yeah.
And so people can talk about, look, it's the Rani who was in 2 stories in the 80s. Everyone cares about the Rani. And then it's just, but he can't be bothered to write the Rani. He's just writing the Master, which he's already done.
Yeah. I feel like with the Rani, and also they spend a lot of time building up Anita Dobson, like Mrs. Thorne, she's going to be, and she's hardly in this. She hasn't had enough time to be developed as well as her own Rani. So it's like, what was even the point of Anita Dobson's version? And also, speaking of those Rani flashbacks, can't believe they've now included dimensions in time, and now that abomination's canon.
Oh, it's got to be canon, of course. Come on, it's dimensions in time.
I can't believe it. I mean, for so many years we've all accepted it as not canon because it is such a mess. But they've just kind of, I was like, what? They included a clip of it. That kind of broke my brain a little bit. But yeah, and also speaking of that, with the whole creator of the Time Lords and all that thing, no doubt they're going to be explaining new Gallifrey lore, probably adding to the Timeless Child, maybe, and also explain bi-generation as well. That's why I'm struggling to love this story, because yes, there is a lot to like, the Conrad, the Wish World, and all that stuff was interesting, but it felt a lot. It just felt too much, and it just doesn't give me enough confidence going into the finale. It's like, how are you even going to try and wrap all this up in like an hour and 5 minutes? Are you even going to wrap it up properly? And also consider the fact that, is this going to be the end of Doctor Who for a while? Is this Shooty's last episode? I'm not going to lie, it's got me extremely nervous, and I know there have been people kind of excited, but I don't know, it's got me a bit concerned. I just keep thinking of that bit from Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park 2 where he says, ooh, that's how it starts. And then before you know it, there's the running and the screaming. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel with this.
So do you think that if somehow the reality war is a success, then you would, in retrospect, like Wishworld more?
Probably. That again, it just depends on how they wrap it up and if it's a satisfying payoff, really. But if it is just the story is just a bunch of exposition, if that's all it is, if it's just mostly exposition with very little action or character moments, it's going to be the Timeless Children all over again. It's going to be that all over again, which I just don't want this to be Timeless Children 2 Electric Boogaloo. I just don't want it to be that.
I get you. I think we have to brace ourselves for an element of touching on the Timeless Child again. I do think that's inevitably what's going to happen in this story. I think we've already had a lot of exposition in episode 1, and I kind of quite like the Rani basically going, I'm giving you loads of exposition for a reason, kind of explaining why she's just explaining Time Lord history and stuff to the Doctor and to the audience that we already know and all this kind of stuff. So I'm hopeful that the second part will take a bit of a different direction, I suppose, and focus on doing things and action and character moments, as you say, rather than pure exposition. But I do think it's inevitable that we're going to get some lore, we're going to get some explanations of the Timeless Child, we're going to get explanations of the Doctor and a daughter probably, and how all that's going to play out. So Bill, I don't know, where are you feeling on all this Omega, Timeless Child, Gallifrey, the Rani, everything? Does it make you excited for episode 2 or the second part or not?
I think it will depend on so in terms of law kind of implications, shall we say, it depends on what it is and how it's executed. I think, to be honest with you, I'm someone who does have issues with the Timeless Child as an idea, but doesn't necessarily dislike it completely. But if they kind of keep adding stuff to it and kind of saying, I don't know, they kind of they say maybe Poppy is a Timeless Child, for example, I don't know,
Yeah.
or something like that. I feel like that lessens it then, and then it's just kind of what's the point in doing a Timeless Child? Because the whole point, from what I could see, was Chris Chibnall trying to, I suppose, do his Andrew Cartmel master plan, kind of
Yeah.
his own spin on it, where he tries to add mystery back to the Doctor, and then for Russell to come along and potentially just explain every single part of the Timeless Child, possibly. That then kind of just feels like, well, what was the point of that, really? Because we know too much about the Doctor now.
Yeah.
I like the fact that Omega's coming back. I think it's really funny that for years fans have been speculating, oh, Omega's going to turn up this season, the Rani's going to turn up this season, and then Russell decides to pull the funniest joke ever and have both of them in the same finale.
Yeah.
I think that's really good. But I am just really concerned that he's going to treat Omega like he did with Sutek and kind of have him just either get defeated really easily and way too quickly, like Sutek, or he literally does nothing. And
Yeah.
or both, it could even be both. He literally stands there, does nothing, then gets defeated really easily.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very telling of the fact that they only really, I think, show had us had a few clips from Big Finish of Omega talking, because obviously, I think pretty much all the actors that have played Omega are now sadly passed away. So it'd be interesting to see is Omega actually a physical presence within the story, or is it more just kind of hyping him up as this kind of Omega, the supposed creator of the Time Lords, even though I think that's more just Russell doing a Russell way of saying oh, he created time travel, which made the Time Lords what they are.
Yeah.
But he can't just say he created time travel because of whatever reason. It's just, yeah, it will depend so much on what the finale does with it all. I really want it to succeed. I mean, I don't want it to be another Empire of Death. And especially if it's Shooty's last episode, I want it to be a really good one for him to go out on. But yeah, kind of having listened to you all kind of say how much stuff is going on, I'm gradually becoming a bit more concerned and thinking actually maybe this isn't going to be the best kind of finale that I think the season deserves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I should say, fundamentally, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a really clever idea behind it. It had a clear concept of what it wanted to do with this story of creating this dystopian world, and then that being a whole plan by the Rani to capture the Doctor and how that all played out. I thought that was really, really effective. But I think we've just kind of lost all confidence in Russell that he can actually pull off a finale, and with the amount of stuff involved in it. And I think it's kind of crazy that we don't actually know how the episode is going to end. I know to an extent we had that with The Power of the Doctor, where we knew that Jodie was going to regenerate, but we didn't know whether she was going to regenerate into David Tennant, into someone else, or into Shooty, or not see it at all. we kind of had a bit of jeopardy, but I think even then we kind of, certainly I kind of felt it's probably going to be David Tennant. Most logically, that's going to happen. But I feel like, sure, there's rumors and whatever everywhere, but I feel like there's no one who really truly knows what's going to happen at the end of this episode, and it could be anything from the Doctor just flies in the TARDIS and carries on to the Doctor regenerates into who knows who, whether it's a new person or somebody we've seen in Doctor Who before. Like I just think it's crazy that it's so completely unknown 2 days before the finale. I don't think that's ever happened in the history of Doctor Who, really.
Yeah, it's insane, and I just, if part 2 ends up, the reality war ends up being really good, I will probably enjoy part 1 a lot more. But I'm not going to lie, with all this unknown uncertainty, and coupled with the fact that Wishworld set up a lot of stuff, it has got me extremely nervous for what's to come on Saturday. As I watched Wishworld twice, and both times I'm just like, man, it feels like a lot, and I just don't know if Russell can pull it all off within an hour and 5 minutes, and if he can pull it off in a satisfying way, or if it's going to take a complete left turn and just kind of ends up being nothing more than glorified exposition for so much of the runtime and just very little action and character modes, because that's kind of what happened with the Timeless Children. With the finale, it was kind of set up to be like this Cyberman sort of story with, the haunting of Diodati and the Centre of the Cybermen for the most part. But then it took a complete left turn in Timeless Children, just getting rid of the Cybermen, just like as if it didn't matter anymore. And then it's just focusing so much on the Timeless Child and everything's just glorified exposition for so much of the runtime for nearly an hour with very little else. It's just, and I'm worried we're going to end up in the exact same situation with just literally explaining every single detail of this is about that, and this is about this, and this is about that, and not enough time for character development or good action moments. And again, I really want Omega to be done justice, because I think Omega's a great character. I love the 3 Doctors. It's such a great story. I think Omega's brilliant. The less said about Arc of Infinity, the better. But, I think Omega's a great character with lots of potential, and I'm just worried he's not going to be done justice, or if he's even going to really show up at all, really. If he's,
exactly.
Again, if he actually is going to physically show up. I mean, say what you will about Sutek, but at least he showed up in Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death. And in all fairness, I didn't mostly mind how he was used. I mean, yes, it was quick how he was defeated. But I didn't mind the stuff with Sutek. It's just really this Ruby Sunday stuff that was just god awful in retrospect. But and I'm just, again, it was only 2 things in that finale. With this, there's a load of other things, and it's just, again, coupled with the fact that, is this going to be the 15th Doctor's final story or not? Is this Belinda and Ruby's final story as well, coupled on top of that? And is this going to be just the last of this season, or is it going to be the last of modern Doctor Who? It's kind of...
It's all an unknown. It's all a complete unknown. And Charlie, I feel like one of the other aspects of these many unknowns is the whole Poppy situation. So let's talk about Poppy for a second. We've spent essentially 2 seasons teasing the return of Susan, for starters, with different references to her, and then obviously seeing her. So is she going to meet the Doctor? And what the heck is going on with Poppy and Space Babies?
I mean, I feel like no matter what happens in the episode, we're getting Timeless Child stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's going to be fully resolved, but I mean, my personal theory is, right, Omega's been trapped in this antimatter, place, underverse, whatever, for what? I mean, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's just a long time. And he's kind of this extremely powerful time being, right? Somehow, I think at the end of the episode, or I don't know, somewhere in the episode, Poppy's going to end up in this underverse. She's going to just fall, and the underverse is sort of portrayed as this swirling vortex, like purple kind of thing. You see where I'm going with this?
I can see where you're going with this.
It's going to be the Timeless Child, And because it was a similar sort of effect that we had in the Timeless Children in that one scene, obviously with the Timeless Child by this weird gateway, and
Yes.
it's going to be a bootstrap paradox,
Yeah.
and basically Poppy is the doctor. Well, Poppy is the time, obviously from Space Babies, ends up in this story, falls through to where Omega's been this whole time,
Yes.
and then here's the big one: Tectayun is Omega. They're the same person.
Okay.
And they're just another name for it, creator of the Time Lords, time travel, whatever. And then it's just a whole bootstrap paradox,
Okay.
basically.
I love it. Wait, so does that make the Doctor's daughter actually the Doctor?
I mean, I'm running with the theory that Poppy isn't the Doctor's daughter and just was
Okay.
in Conrad's world.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm
Go on.
hoping this isn't true, but I can kind of see that sort of thing happening. I don't know. There
I
must be
feel
some
like
timeless child stuff happening here.
it's inevitable we're going to get something that would does resemble fan fiction, for want of a better word.
Yes,
I
yes.
don't think we're going to get it based on all the elements we have currently. Like whatever the outcome, it is going to feel like fan
Yes.
fiction.
I think this episode, as good as it was, already did feel like fan fiction, and we're going to get more of it. I think. I mean, it might not be to the extreme that Tectayun is Omega and all of that, but
No.
uh, I feel like I wouldn't hate it too much if all of this was the case. I don't know. Like, it
Yeah,
makes sense for the Time Lords to come out by a temporal paradox like the Bootstrap paradox, because that's
yeah.
just such a, it's a very science fictiony way to do it, and I quite like it. But that also means, chronologically speaking, the first appearance of the Doctor is in Space Babies. So maybe that's not the best.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's. uh, I just don't even
it's very weird.
know.
Oh,
Or it could be that Poppy is actually the Doctor's daughter and Susan's mum. It could be that too, I guess.
And then there's this mysterious photo we've seen of the Doctor and Belinda meeting in a nightclub where
Yes.
they seem to not know each other. That is apparently from a reality war,
Yeah.
which then just throws up a whole more load of questions
It's
of I haven't got a clue. So, like
yeah.
everything they've implied so far seems to hint at the Doctor and Belinda having a child together somehow. That is the Doctor's daughter and therefore Susan's mum. But I just don't understand how that makes any sense.
yeah,
It's weird.
and also, is the fugitive Doctor going to even show up? And if they were dealing with time style stuff, is the fugitive Doctor going to be making an appearance here? Is that going to be paid off in
Are we
any
going to see
manner?
Omega battling against the fugitive Doctor back in, the pre Hartnell Time Lord Society type thing?
Exactly. Is
Who
Rassilon
even
going to
knows?
show up for we know? Is
There
he
we
going
go.
to come back?
Yeah, exactly.
All of this. It just feels like Russell playing with his action figures, and
Yeah,
just kind of. It's like he's writing with a dice. He's kind of got like a Dungeons and Dragons set of dice, and he's like, "We're going to have a '70s villain, Omega." And he's going to be defeated this way, and it just feels like Russell just taking some action figures from his shelf
Yeah,
and just being like, you know what, we can make a story with these guys, we can make it work. And listen, as much as I love Russell for basically saving Doctor Who from cancellation, well, obviously he brought it back in
yeah.
2005 and was amazing for 4 seasons. Saving it from cancellation, pretty much. I mean, it
yeah,
was announced in 21, he took over in 23,
Yeah.
and that was, I respect him for that. But it just feels to me like Russell he sort of thinks, I can just bring back all these characters, and everyone's going to love me because I'm Russell and I'm Doctor Who God. And he sort of forgets that he also needs to write some good television too.
Yeah, and it's
And as much as he has done these past couple
mm,
of years, I'm really not trying to have a proper go at him here, because he has made some good Doctor Who, and I have liked season 2 so far. And I think even if Reality War is bad, it's not going to change my opinion. This is a pretty good season, really. The
yeah,
the hit rate has been pretty impressive. Like, I
mm,
have loved 2, 3, 4, and 6.
yeah, yeah,
Like, 1 and 5 were also pretty solid episodes too. Like, even if the finale's bad, that's the only bad episode of this season. Which,
well,
even season 1, Space Babies, and the finale were both pretty bad. But one bad story out of 7, it's not bad, is it?
yeah. And I will say this: even if, as I said, if the reality ends up being bad, there's no way it can be as bad as the Chibnall finales. There's no way it can be bad as all three of them.
yeah,
And one thing you mentioned about all these different characters and bringing back all the stuff like Sutek, Tomek, and all that stuff. I'm just really curious as to know what the casual audience is going to be making of all this because he's been saying since season one this is going to be a big relaunch for new Doctor Who fans. He's going to relaunch
Yeah.
Doctor Who with the Shooting Gatwa era. And it just feels like such the weirdest one because he's front loading Sutek and Timeless Child and also Rani and Omega. It just feels
Yeah.
like it's like he's not really picking a lane. Now, are you trying to appeal to a new audience or are you trying to appeal to classic Doctor Who fans? It just feels like such a weird middle ground to try and be in. And if I'll be honest, the only season that's tried the mostly to feel like a true relaunch for fans in the modern era, apart from series one, the only one was series 11.
Mhm.
And yes, it wasn't very good. I didn't like series 11, but that did feel like the most like a relaunch for a new Doctor Who series. I mean, yes, of course, it didn't work at all. I mean, it wasn't very good, but you could tell it was trying and not succeeding in trying to be this new relaunch for new fans. But I feel like series 12 onwards has just felt like a massive step back from that, as it's
Yeah, it's
possible to
crazy.
conceive,
It's
really.
like the showrunners have just become completely obsessed with lore and the Doctor's past and general fan service and all of it. And I totally agree that it's nonsense for Russell to say, "Oh, this is the time to start watching Doctor Who. It's just a good jumping on point. It's season one. All of this," and it's just nuts that you then bring back more classic monsters really in 2 seasons than we've had in virtually the whole of New Who. Like it's just insane. I just don't get like as a fan. Obviously, I'm not fussed, but if I'm a casual viewer and we get to the kind of peak moment of Wishworld and then the Rani goes Omega, I'm just like, who is that? Okay, cool. Okay, and it was the same with Sutek. Like I just don't get why he's choosing to make those decisions.
Yeah, I mean, and again, relaunch for casual audiences. The fact that he's brought back Sutek, Rani, and Omega, they're more as much as they can be great characters, they're more, well, less the Rani, but more Sutek and Omega. They're more obscure villains. They appeared like once or twice. It was, I mean, I don't think he would have had too much of a problem with like the Daleks or the Cybermen. I mean, I think he would get away with that. But Sutek and Omega, that's very niche to
Yes,
do that.
yeah,
It's only going to appeal to classic Doctor Who fans. I mean, yes, I know who Omega is because I've watched the Three Doctors and Arkham
yeah,
Infinity, but for the casual fans, they're going to be like, huh? It's going to be like that bit from Avengers Endgame where Thanos is like, I don't even know who you are. It's just.
exactly. That's it. Yeah, it does feel a very very odd choice. And so Bill, one other aspect that I feel like I'm hoping to see the end of in the next episode, shall we say, is the whole pantheon of gods and weird stuff going on in the universe by generation, all this kind of thing. Like it's been going on since A Wild Blue Yonder. It feels like now is the time to close the chapter. Like, sure, it's been cool to see some different gods and things, but I feel like we've kind of done enough of those now. I really hope that they make sure to keep Omega as a Time Lord and not a god in the next episode because he's not. He's a Time Lord. But I don't know. Do you think that that's all going to get wrapped up in the next episode? And do you think like by generation is like caused by the universe being weird and by the end of that, I suppose, do we think that then kind of stops by generation happening as well?
I think there's definitely going to be an explanation for by generation
Yeah.
and how come both the Doctor and the Rani
Yeah.
have now been through it when it's supposed to be a myth that like doesn't actually happen normally.
Yeah.
I think there'll be some kind of explanation of that. Maybe it at least some kind of genetic experiments from the Rani gone wrong or something like that, and it's affected the Doctor too somehow.
Mm.
In terms of like pantheon of gods, I would be surprised if Russell didn't like if there's a season three, I would be very surprised if Russell doesn't continue them to season three. Like
Mm.
as much as I get where you're coming from in terms of like it is starting to feel a bit stale, I suppose, and starting to feel like a bit like we've got a baby now as a member of it. Like
Yeah.
it sounds good on paper, this kind of the group of godlike beings. It sounds great. But
Mm.
I think like it hasn't fully explored it as well as it could have done. And I feel like it's kind of often just reverted to like, I suppose, gimmicky type of gods in terms of like Maestro and Lux. Like, as much as I like those characters and like those episodes they were in, I think they were very much like, oh, this is the god of music, and therefore we're going to get someone who's really musical into it.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get the god of lights, and he's going to be cartoon character that comes to life. Um, Rather than just kind of focusing on the god aspect itself. And
Mm.
also the fact is, I mean, when you kind of like say, oh, this is like a godlike being, that in my head automatically means they've got to be like a big boss. Like they've got to be like someone who's really tricky to defeat. And a doctor's been defeating them willy-nilly quite easily, really. I mean, it's not taken too much effort for him to defeat them each time, and he's faced at least what, four, maybe five now with Omega, and I suppose six with the baby. It's just like if there's not a satisfying conclusion to all of that stuff within this episode in terms of how it all if Omega is at least not portrayed as a god himself, but as like a godlike being,
Yeah.
but like still a Time Lord, then that's fine. But as you say, if he just turns out to be like the god of time travel, then it's just like, what what are you doing, Russell? Like he's not. He's clearly a Time Lord. And it's not like even with Sutek you could get away with it because like yes, he was an Osiren, but I don't know, there kind of felt more kind of wriggle kind of room there.
Yeah.
Whereas with Omega, it's just like, no, we know for facts he's a Time Lord. He's one of the founding kind of fathers of Gallifrey, and
Mm.
to make him just kind of evolve into this godlike being
Yeah.
or whatever Russell ends up doing with that, I think that would be just like, no, that would be a step too far. But honestly, I do feel like if there's going to be a season three, even if it is without Shooty, if it's still with Russell, then it probably will be that they'll just continue the Pantheon anyway. Like, because I feel like Russell is just really keen on the fantasy kind of aspect, even if I would kind of say, has he really kind of explored it as well as he could have done? Probably not. Like, I
Mm.
feel like you could have definitely explored it a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. And
Mm.
I know we hope that Omega isn't a god, but then in the Three Doctors, he does say, I should have been a god. So presumably
Mm.
Russell's just watched the YouTube highlights of the Three Doctors and gone, oh, Omega says he wants to be a god. Okay, I'll make him a god. Great. Which feels like the vibes that Russell seems to run on with some of his classic Who moments. So Charlie, just one of the last things I wanted to touch on before we kind of come to our final scores and predictions. I'm going to go for this time. Is the whole Belinda Ruby thing. Like we've talked about how Belinda feels like she has less and less character as we've gone through this season. So does it again just kind of beg the question, why wasn't Ruby just the companion for both seasons? Like, if ultimately Belinda has kind of three good episodes, a fourth episode where she's barely in it, a fifth episode where she doesn't really do very much, a sixth episode where she's generic companion rather than really got any character, and then this episode where she's not actually her normal Belinda at any point in this episode. What if she logically she's at the end of episode 8, if she doesn't die, she's just going to stay on Earth because that's what she's wanted the whole time. So what was the point? And should we have just had Ruby for 2 seasons?
I mean, yeah, we should have had Ruby for 2 seasons. I think it's again, part of me can't help but think Russell's plan was, let's put this actress in a side character role in season one, and then very shortly after, or was it before that she was announced? I can't remember. Around that time, she was announced as the companion for season two.
Yep.
And for me, this is just kind of Russell's sort of way of being like, "Oh, look, guys, another mystery. It's look, it's the companion, and she's also played by like it, even though it was in like Robot Revolution. It was not long after the Doctor met Belinda, and he
Yep.
was literally just like, I met one of your descendants, and that was that. It was just a descendant of hers. They're not the same character. It's not a Clara situation.
Yeah.
It was just wrapped up like that. That's sort of what I feel has happened here. And it was just sort of another way of kind of, because Ruby's appeared a couple of times this season, it's kind of Russell making a more interconnected world and it being like, since Ruby's not the companion, let's put Ruby in a couple of episodes in this season, and then it's a Stolen Earth Journey's End type finale where we have her returning. It's like she's not a companion this season, so she can return this season.
Yeah.
And be that companion who returns. And I like Ruby. And I like Belinda. I really don't hate either companion. I think they have more depth than Chibnall's companions.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we would like Ruby a lot more if she was just the companion for the whole time, because Ruby's now had 11 episodes?
Yeah.
11 episodes. And I'm really liking Ruby now. Interestingly, 11 episodes is less than the number of episodes she would have had if we just had normal length seasons, which makes me think it's about volume. Have 13 episode seasons and you're going to get to know the companions better and like them more.
Exactly.
Just if it was 13 episode seasons, Ruby would have been in 28 episodes by now, or 27, whatever, like with the Christmas specials.
Yep.
Just have her there and we'll be really close to her, the same way we were to Rose in 2006. It's to me, it's so weird having a companion for this. Like Doctor Who has had nearly 900 episodes. It's so weird to have a companion for 8.
Yeah.
It's so strange. Like Jamie had 100 episodes. I think Romana had around that amount. Sarah Jane must have had about 100. It's crazy. And even Yaz was in 31? She was just in all of Whittaker's episodes.
Yeah, she was in episode 1, yeah.
But even then, she was in Doctor Who for 5 years, and she had 30 episodes. It's crazy. It's really crazy. And I just think, as much as I like Ruby and Belinda, have these longer seasons, and you will just like companions more. And I think, interestingly, you can actually get away with having multiple companions if you have longer seasons. I feel a good example of this is obviously the sort of TARDIS family we have in series 5, 6, and 7.
Yeah.
Well, first half of 7. We have the Doctor, Amy, and Rory, and I think that really works. 2 companions in the TARDIS nowadays would be a nightmare because I feel like 1 is too many at the moment. It's a huge problem with volume. I think literally double the episodes and keep the budget, and I really don't think you would have many complaints. You would have more positive, just because thing is with Doctor Who, I was thinking this the other day. Most streaming shows nowadays, it's one story across the whole season. Stranger Things is 9 episodes in a season, or 8, 9, whatever. Make that 12 episodes, and you're going to have the same story, but just dragged out more, and it's going to be worse. But Doctor Who is episodic. You have more episodes, and it's not like it's making it more dragged out. You're just getting more of it. It's literally it's quantity that we want, which sounds counterintuitive because of all the quality over quantity. But either make a 6 episode season with one story, or do 15 and make 15, or maybe 12 stories, have a few 2-parters in there. And that would make it more justifiable to have a 3-part finale, which I think is what we need. I really think this feels like part 1 of a 3-part finale, not a 2-part finale, which is quite worrying because obviously it's not a 3-part finale. I feel like as much as Flux wasn't very good, Chibnall sort of had the right idea with what he was doing. I feel like there's just kind of 2 lanes, and Russell's just driving right between them, and doing the episode count of a 1 series arc that's just 1 story, while not doing that and making them episodic. I'm aware this has just become a rant about how I don't like the 8 episode count, but it's just a problem about the companions and the fact that we used to have. Back in the 60s, we'd have 3. And I think that was a great dynamic. If you look at, first Dr. Susan and Barbara, that's obviously a classic. It was the first ever combination, and we had a solid 50 episodes with them.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I feel like 1 companion feels like too many, and maybe we just have more depth to the characters if Ncuti was traveling alone. But that's just my take.
I completely agree, and it's funny because this week I was kind of looking back on these 2 seasons, and I'm like, there was a lot I really like here. Why don't I love them more? And you're absolutely right. These shorter episode counts have just been killing it. It's hemorrhaging a lot of really good like stuff we could have been having, like character relationships and good Doctor companion dynamics. I mean, imagine if we had season one and it was two companions, Ruby and Belinda, right from the word go, two very different, one excited, one not excited to be with the Doctor. That could create like a fun dynamic. And imagine if it was like 13 episodes, or 14 if you want to count a Christmas special, across that run. That's a perfectly good time to develop both companions and create like fun scenarios. And if you want to maintain excitement, do a key to time situation. Have this kind of thing that's going on in the background that they need to solve and factor into the story while they still have a standalone adventure. That is a good way of keeping the excitement, build the momentum, and then when we get to and then you could do like a 2 or 3 part finale where they tie up this thing that they've been trying to solve throughout the season and revolve it around that. It's very easy, but yeah, it's both seasons. I mean, both Ruby and Belinda, I felt like had a lot of potential and some good character moments, some good episodes. But I feel like as the season kind of goes on, they matter less and less almost, and it's a real shame. And again, why does Russell feel the need to have a new companion in each season? Why can't we just have like 2 or 3 seasons with a companion? Like, I mean, Clara, she got 2 full seasons with Capaldi, and they were both excellent. So that allowed for some great Doctor companion dynamics. And again, took many different twists and turns along the way. Fantastic. Amy and Rory, I said 2.5 seasons. Phenomenal. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, Lord knows. I mean, Yaz is definitely not one of my favorite companions. I thought she was very underdeveloped. She got 3 seasons and some specials. It's like, why can't we have the same with Ruby and Belinda's, who have a lot of potential but just been absolutely wasted? I'm not gonna lie. As much as there have been stories in this new RTD2 run that I've really enjoyed, just absolutely fantastic, can't help but feel like there's a lot of potential that's been wasted along the way.
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, Ryan, we've had 6 RTD seasons now, and we've had 5 different companions in those 6 seasons. The only one who's done more than one was Rose, whereas you had Martha for 1 season, Donna, Ruby, Belinda. Whereas the other showrunners, you've had 2 seasons for Amy and Rory, 2 seasons for Clara, 3 seasons for Yaz, 2 seasons for Ryan and Graham. Like, so many multiple. That seems to just be what Russell likes, is just switching them out and then having them pop up here and there. So maybe if we get a season 3, will Belinda occasionally pop in? I don't know. I mean, she can end up working for Unit or something. Who knows? But anyway, let's bring this episode into land. So Bill, I'm going to come to you first, and we're going to go firstly for an episode score for Wish World, but then also just a couple of predictions for the finale in terms of what's going to happen at the end. Is the Doctor going to regenerate? And what's going to happen? Let's go with what's going to happen to the 2 main characters, Belinda and the Doctor. Where are they going to be at the end of the episode? So firstly, your episode score, and then where are those 2 characters going to be at the end of Emperor of Death? Reality
in terms
War,
of the
not Emperor of Death.
yeah,
Reality War.
So in terms of the score, I think I'll give it a 6.5 or 7 out of 10.
Okay.
I think that's like it's good, but like yeah, it's part 1 of a finale. Like it will be very much dependent on what the part 2 is like. If the part 2 does not live up to all the hype, then part 1 just becomes worse by association, basically. So
yeah.
In terms of what I think is going to happen, I think in an ideal world, I would want Duty to not regenerate.
Yeah.
I'd want him to do, we'll say at least like 1 more season. I think standard 3 seasons would be fine for him. And then Belinda, I think, like, again, ideally, I would like her to have been there more, but knowing Russell, as you say, wanting to constantly replace the companions from season to season, I think it's probably going to be like a quiet, kind of like slightly emotional exit, like it was with Ruby, I suppose, really, where it was them just saying goodbye to each other and it was quite sad and everything. But in terms of like what I think could actually happen, it could be that we just get all of that, what I've just said, and that's fine, and I'm happy with all that.
Yeah.
Or it could be like, we'll say worst case scenario. The episode is just pretty terrible and full of lots of lore dumps, and yeah, it's even worse than like the Timeless Children for that, and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Omega's not fully there, doesn't get much to do. The Rani is just resurrecting Gallifrey for no good reason. And then we get a really strange kind of of Poppy being the timeless child. Then we get a very kind of like very sudden regeneration scene for Shooty, and we get like a very sudden, quick like departure scene for Belinda in terms of like maybe, as you say, with that nightclub picture, like maybe that's like reality has been restored, but like he doesn't remember who the doctor is, or they
Yeah.
both don't remember who each other is, or whatever. And then that's her goodbye scene, pretty much. And the doctor goes off and regenerates, and we don't even see who he regenerates into. And then the show is on hiatus for at least, what, 18 months, whatever 1985 was.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that would be a worst case scenario for me, I think, would just be
Yeah.
all of that. So I really hope that at least the majority of that doesn't happen, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, we will have to see. Ryan, we'll come to you next. Your score and your predictions.
Oh boy, where do I even begin? Oh, me and me. It's difficult to score this because it's the first half of
Yeah.
the story, and
Yeah.
right now I think it would be a 6 out of 10,
Okay.
to be honest. But that could change. It could go up if, depending on how well the reality war goes. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm hoping it's good. I'm hoping it is a good, solid finale, and I can look back and say, actually, this is a solid story. What was I worrying about? It does pay off well in the end, but again, I'm just uncertain with the amount of stuff that's going on. It's going to be weird, I will say. Whatever happens, I do hope, and if this is the last one for a while, I hope it's a survival type ending where they just sort of go off into the sunset and just be like, somewhere the tea's getting cold. Come on, we've got work to do. That kind of thing. I hope we get that kind of sort of happy ending-ish way for the finale. I mean, who knows? I mean, I know they did reshoots earlier this year for the reality war. I don't know if that factors into this ending. I don't know. Maybe it was the ending they had all this time, but yeah, part of me, yeah, hoping that Shooty doesn't leave, but again, it just really depends really on how the story goes, and again, what they announce after it. I mean, who knows? They could give, as soon as the story finishes, there'll be probably some big announcement on the BBC website about the future of Doctor Who. After that, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. There's a lot. There's a whole lot that could happen. That's for sure. And so Charlie, you can have the last word on this. Your score and predictions.
A bit higher than you guys. Episode in pure isolation, 8 out of 10. And it's a solid 8 as well. It's not like a soft 8. It was very enjoyable because the majority of the episode was this very, strange Truman Show-esque world where you don't really know what's going on. And the mystery is just nicely built up, really. I think it's, completely disregarding whatever may happen in the reality war. That was a solid 8 out of 10. I think I'm not saying all of my big theory about Poppy being the timeless child is true.
Yeah.
It could be. I really think there is a non-zero possibility that Poppy is the timeless child.
Yeah.
I think I think it will end with Shooty regenerating.
Okay.
Open-ended regeneration. You'll see a close-up of his face, and there'll be the golden regeneration energy, and it'll cut to black. I think Susan will show up actually. Susan, Susan will just show up in person. That's Susan. Great. It won't just be some, like on a TV or in a flashback or whatever. Susan will show up.
Okay.
I can't really say anything else. I'm quite worried that they're just going to make Omega a big CGI monster like
Yeah.
like they did with Sutek, which I really don't hope is a thing. It'd be cool. It would be very cool if he's a faceless villain and we just have a voice from some, I don't know, some Big Finish actor. I can't say who plays him in Big Finish, but something like that. I know you mentioned earlier, Bill, about all the actors who've played Omega have sadly passed away. Peter Davison is still alive.
Yeah.
We could get a Peter
Okay.
Davison with lettuce on his face, like in Arc of Infinity.
Great. Cannot wait.
It's not out of the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could happen. You know, he showed up a few years ago. Obviously as the Fifth Doctor, not Omega, but you know, he could show up again.
Yeah.
If Shooty does, so yeah, I think Shooty will be an open-ended regeneration.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if he did reshoots in, like, was it February or March or something?
Something like that. There
Yeah.
was some finale reshoots, yeah.
That late, I feel like that must be a regeneration. And as much as I would like just, you know, complete, you know, universe reset, no Pantheon, no fantasy anymore, and it's just Shooty and Belinda go off into the distance. That's that. I feel like we're getting an open-ended regeneration. And I mean, final, you know, I feel like Doctor Who will come back in a few years.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 2030, but it won't be like 2041, you know, 16 break. I don't want to say before 2030, but I'll say before 2032. Because there's a 7-year gap between Survival and the movie. I don't think we're getting that big of a gap now.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, for all we know, we could get season 3 announced in 2 weeks, and it's coming out in 2027. That could absolutely happen. But yeah. Final word: 8 out of 10. Shooty's going to regenerate.
Yeah.
I will say one very, very quickly. If Doctor, if they were to hiatus, and if they do more seasons in the future, given that we've had so much stuff, you know, with the Timeless Child and our bi-generations, I just hope we don't do more of this, or we need to rewrite the rule book constantly with each season. I just wish we could just tell a new chapter in the Doctor's story with new adventures and just carry on from there without feeling the need to change the status quo and law again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to get that in this episode, but hopefully this is the final moment of that, and then we can kind of fully move on from that. And as you say, Charlie, Doctor Who might not come back for a while. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens kind of straight after the episode, in terms of whether there's like a press release about a future season, whether we get a caption on screen that says Doctor Who will return in 2027 or whatever. Like, I'd be kind of surprised if it's so completely open-ended and there's no information at all. I feel like that would be a bit of a weird one, especially if you leave it on essentially a cliffhanger of an open regeneration and then don't give the audience anything. Like, that'd be weird.
We're getting something, I think, is no matter what it is, whether it will return or it will return in 2027.
Yeah.
I mean, the perfect world, we just get a season 3 announcement, and that's that. And all of this silence has just been Russell, you know, because the world ends on May 24th, all of that. In a perfect world, all that silence is deliberate and it's meta, and it's where we actually are getting season 3, maybe with a 16th Doctor that they haven't announced. But I think it would be great if, like, on like Sunday or something, they announce the 16th Doctor. You know, if there is an open-ended regeneration, we get a casting announcement straight away. That would be nice, I think, of Russell to do, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, exactly. And so, well, my final score, I give an 8 out of 10 for Wishworld. I agree. It was a pretty strong episode. I enjoyed it. It might go down if the finale is terrible, as we've all said, and it's going to define, this finale is going to define probably the whole of RTD2, may well be defined by this episode. As much as we said, I feel like we said The Vanquishers was going to define the Chibnall era, and it kind of did. It kind of was the summation of disappointment. And so the reality will be the same. And I also think Shooty's going to regenerate at the end of this episode, and I'm going to say he's going to regenerate into someone, and we're going to see someone on the other side of regeneration. Don't know who, no idea. But I feel like we're going to get a shock. Whoa, look, there's a new Doctor. Oh my gosh. And then there'll be some announcement of a future season coming in like 2 years' time. That's where I'm going to go. Maybe this is all just wishful thinking and slightly hopeful on my part, but that is what I'm predicting. And we've only got a couple of days to find out. So that's very, very exciting. But that's just about all we've got time for on this edition of the podcast. Thank you so much for listening and joining us throughout the season. We'll be back to discuss the reality war next week. But from me, Ryan, Charlie and Bill, it is goodbye for now.